You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 164. Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kailey
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life.
Hello there and welcome. We are so happy to be here with you today. So this is going to be a solo episode with me, Kailey. I'm back to the podcast after my maternity leave. You may not have even noticed that I was away because I had pre-recorded the last 12 months of episodes that I was in before I went on maternity leave so that we'd be able to connect with you here, even though in real time I was actually with my son. So I'm excited to be back because I learned a lot in my new role as a mom that will have a big influence on my teaching practices. And I always love sharing what I'm learning with you. Today, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite topics, emotions, but from a new angle that I've learned about recently, interpersonal neurobiology. Before I dive in, we're excited to share this episode's sponsor.
Did you know that Canadian educators are highly sought after by top international schools worldwide? Teaching overseas is professionally rewarding and offers an amazing lifestyle rich with culture, social, and travel experiences. Search Associates is the world's largest recruiting agency representing over 800 top international schools in over 120 countries worldwide. Each year, they've helped over 3,000 teachers, counselors, librarians, and specialists secure great jobs in their carefully vetted K-12 international schools, where teachers like you can enjoy small class sizes, motivated students, and high academic standards in a supportive learning environment. Gary McPhee brings over 30 years of teaching and administrative experience in international schools to his role as a senior associate with Search. He started his teaching career in Toronto in 1982 and ventured on his first overseas post in 1988. His international teaching career has taken him and his family to Singapore, Taiwan, Tanzania, Qatar, Canada, and China, first as a teacher, then principal, and international recruiter. He now shares his passion for international teaching with other adventurous educators. If you're interested in learning more on how to become an international educator, join Search Associates' free Facebook group at Search Associates Canada and visit ca.searchassociates.com or email Gary at gmcphee@searchassociates.com. That's GMACPHIE@searchassociates.com. Check out this episode's show notes for the details. Register with Search Associates Canada and receive personalized advice and support throughout your international job search. Adventure awaits. Take the first step. Contact them today.
All right, let's get started talking about interpersonal neurobiology. What a mouthful. So I discovered this term when I was curious to learn more about the development of the mind from birth. So over the past 10 years, I've been pretty obsessive about learning about the brain and emotions and how the body and mind work together and how that affects students' learning. So I've always really been focused mostly on school-age children and teens and adults because that's mostly what we talk about here on the podcast. But becoming a mom, I wanted to understand what's happening in my son's brain from birth. How do I support his social emotional development from day one? So the book that first caught my attention that I was like, this is the one I need to read is The Developing Mind by Dr. Daniel Siegel. Now, you might recognize that name because he has lots of really great work within the realm of emotions and the brain and how to support social emotional development. A very popular book that you may have heard of, maybe even read yourself, is The Whole Brain Child, which he wrote with Tina Payne Bryson. So if you haven't read The Whole Brain Child, I would suggest that you start there. That book is written super well to help us understand the different parts of the brain, what happens when students, when kids, when adults are feeling big emotions, how we can support integration of the mind. So getting the brain sort of back online when it's gone offline from being flooded with big emotions. So that book is really great as like a quick sort of read that gives you really actionable things that you can do right away. It's easy to get through and easy to understand. Now, with the book, The Developing Mind by Dr. Dan Siegel, that one is a lot more academic. It is pretty intense and it took me many months to get through. I listened to it as an audiobook so that it could play in the background while I was doing mom things. And I found it super interesting. I found myself listening to a portion, pausing it, just letting it sort of simmer in my mind, then going back and listening again, and then finding someone that I could talk to about it because it was just so interesting. So it really went into depth. Now, the really big takeaway that I got from this book was this idea of emotions are about me. They're things that happen in my body, but emotions are also we. It's something that is used as a mechanism for communication. So this is so, I don't know, it really just opened my mind and made things that I had observed in the classroom over years and years, and even just with interactions with other people about how, emotions are contagious. And if I'm walking into the classroom feeling stressed, my students seem to have more trouble regulating their emotions on those days. It's like my stress makes them stressed. Or if I walk into the classroom, the day after Halloween, for example, where students are out late and eating tons of sugar, and that next day they're really struggling to manage their emotions. Their emotions are a little bit everywhere. I feel that in my body. I can feel that dysregulation and it really throws me off. So these are things that I have observed, but seeing it explained through a scientific lens with emphasis on the studies that have shown these mechanisms and how they work, that was just so interesting to me. So I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty of interpersonal neurobiology because that is a gigantic topic. What I'm going to do is leave you with the most important parts to understand that you can integrate into your classroom right away with your students and really into any interaction that allows you to understand yourself and others better. So the first thing to understand here is that emotion is communication. Emotion is a mechanism within our human body that allows different parts of the body to communicate and work together. So how this works is emotion is the messenger, essentially, between our mind, our thoughts, and our body, our actions. So say, for example, I am feeling stressed in the morning. On my drive to work, I was thinking of all the things on my to-do list, how there's no way I'm going to have enough time to get it all done, how I'm going to be putting out fires all day. It's just going to be one of those days. So as I'm having these thoughts of all the things on my to-do list, my brain, my mind starts creating this emotion communication. It's like sending an email to my body or a text message to my body saying, ooh, there's something stressful coming up. We need to prepare the body for these stressful things. We need to get the body into stress mode so that we're ready to act. So that emotion starts changing my biology. It starts telling my heart to beat a little bit faster. with the intention of sending more oxygen, nutrients through the blood to my muscles so that my muscles can get me into action, so that my muscles are being prioritized, so that if there is a danger that I have to fight or flee from, that my muscles are ready for action. So I might feel sensations in my body that feel kind of restlessness. It's hard for me to sit still. My muscles are tight. I feel tension in my body. I might feel tension in my jaw. Another thing that's going to happen is my digestion is going to slow down. So when I am in stress mode, my body is thinking of short-term survival. So my body is saying, we don't need to digest this food right now. We can do that later. Right now, what's more important is using our energy to fight or flee against this danger that we are thinking about. So we might feel knots in our stomach. We might feel kind of this upset feeling in our stomach. And then what happens to our mind? So our mind shifts gears as well. We lose access to the parts of the brain that allow us to sort of think long term, see the big picture. And instead, our mind shifts into this mode of being hyper-focused on problems and solutions. So when we are really into this stress response, we're more likely to actually find more problems than might even really be there, because that's just the mode that our mind has shifted into. So we are then in this cycle. So I have these thoughts that are creating the emotion for stress. And then that emotion messenger, that communication system, is telling my body to get ready for action, to get ready for these stressors that are coming up. So this response is so important because say I'm walking down the street and a car swerves in front of me, and my body is really great at quickly getting me into this fight or flight mode so that I can protect myself in this immediate moment. Our body is meant to then swing back to rest and restore pretty quickly. We don't need to be stuck in this fight or flee, because once the danger is over, we can move on, go back to digesting, go back to thinking long term, going back to our heart beating at a regular rate. So throughout the day, our body is meant to swing back and forth between these two modes of action and then rest and digest. What happens often, and I think us teachers can really understand this, is that we get stuck in the stress response often. And kind of the reason for that is because this is a loop system. So when I'm thinking thoughts of stressful things that are coming up, it's pumping out these emotion messengers for stress that are getting my body into action. Now, in this action mode, my body is then communicating back to my mind, hey, we're in action mode, we're ready to fight. So to get off this Ferris wheel, we really have to be kind of intentional about shifting our thoughts, about recognizing the sensations in our body that feel like stress, that tightness, that stomach clenching, that jaw clenching, the hyper focus of our mind, with kind of the inability to focus really well. Our mind kind of jumps back and forth to different problems. So when we recognize this in the body, we can say, oh, okay, I'm in this cycle where my thoughts are creating these emotion messengers that are dictating my actions. And then my actions are talking back to my mind and saying, oh yeah, we're in this stress mode. Let's keep going. So emotion is just communication. So the same is true for any emotion. I'm using stress as an example because I think that's kind of a place where we can often get stuck in a cycle of emotion. But this is true with happiness. Oh, I'm on my way home to see my son. I can't wait to see him. It's going to be so great to see his cute little face. And then as I'm thinking that thought, my body is receiving these emotion communication messengers that are shifting the sensations, the feelings in my body to dictate my actions for joy. And we can see the difference in people when they are in that stress state or versus when they're in a joy state. We can see they hold their body different. So our mind and our body are not separate. They are in constant communication. So we call this neurobiology. This is our neuro, like the brain, the mind, our neurons, which are, mostly in our skull, but also throughout our body. And biology, just what's happening within our body. So emotion is internal communication. This can be so empowering to understand this cycle, because once we can recognize this cycle in our body, we can take actions to shift it. So sometimes we are stuck in this stress response cycle and we can't think ourselves out of it because we're so deeply ingrained in all of our thoughts of stress that isn't the best way to shift it. Sometimes we need to use our body to talk back to our mind. So something like going for a walk in nature, our body is moving. We are sort of digesting those stress emotions, the stress messengers within our body. We're working them out as we're walking and moving our body. We're seeing things in nature that kind of trigger this shift back into the rest and restore state. So we can use our actions to then break that cycle. So emotion is internal communication, neurobiology. It's a communication system within my own body. Now, what kind of blew my mind reading the book, The Developing Mind, was that emotion is also communication between people. So we are a social species. Our body language communicates a lot to the people around us. Those actions, the emotions that turn into actions, the posture, the way we hold our body, what our movements look like, right? When I'm stressed, I'm going to be moving kind of fast, kind of fidgety. Whereas when I'm really calm, I'm going to move kind of more in a fluid way. So people can notice that. So emotion is communication internally, but it's also interpersonal communication. And this is what we would call interpersonal neurobiology. So what does this look like? Let's go back to our example of the stressed teacher. So I'm thinking stressful thoughts. I'm feeling that emotion communication is telling my body to act in a stressed out way. I come into my classroom and my students observe my actions. They can see that I'm not really present with them. They can tell that my movements are kind of short and quick and not fluid. They can tell that maybe as I'm talking, I'm a little bit all over the place. My speech isn't super focused. They can sense the emotion in my body. So then that shifts into their internal communication system. So they might now be thinking, oh, my teacher's stressed. Why is my teacher stressed? Is something going on? Is there a test? Is there something that I don't know about? Should I be worried about something? Oh, I wonder what's going on. Oh, today's going to be a bad day. I can tell my teacher's going to be a bad mood. Ugh. And then they start going through, these thoughts of how they're going to be affected by what they're observing in your actions. They can observe your emotions. So they start thinking those thoughts, whether that's conscious or unconscious, and it's likely unconscious. They probably aren't aware that their mind is noticing that we're stressed and then kind of trying to figure out how that's going to affect them and how they should act. But it is going to create those emotion messengers. Their neurobiology is going to shift into a stressed, a worried type of emotion. So what's that going to look like in their actions? So their mind is communicating to their body, ooh, there's a danger here. This day isn't looking good so far. So how are they going to act? Their heart's going to start beating. Their muscles want to move. They're in that fight or flight mode. Their stomach is upset. So you might start noticing that your students are having a hard time sitting still. They're a little bit all over the place. They're having a hard time following instructions. They are maybe starting to have conflict between one another. All sorts of ways that now we observe their actions as misbehavior. We're seeing the misbehavior. But if we can think of this mechanism and go, okay, what do their actions mean in this thought, emotion, action cycle? Their actions of being dysregulated mean that there's something going on in their mind that's communicating to their body that they should be in a stress response right now. So now we're looping back and forth now. We've got a figure eight going on. So we came into the classroom stressed. Our students notice that we're stressed, and then that creates stress within their body, and then their actions create stress for us. And then we are more dysregulated, and then they're more dysregulated. And then we're like doing this figure eight back and forth of looping these thoughts, emotions, actions cycle that isn't supporting our ability to teach or learn effectively. So this just, I find so interesting because we've all observed this in the classroom. We've seen how emotion is contagious. But when I read this and saw there's a whole term for this, interpersonal neurobiology, it is a thing. We as humans are made to be incredibly efficient at observing the emotions of other people through their actions. We can feel their feelings sometimes, or we can just tell when they're off. We've all had the experience of asking someone, oh, how are you doing today? And they say, oh, fine. But you know immediately that they're not fine. They're saying one thing, but their emotion, their actions, their body language is speaking way louder than the words that they're saying. So understanding that our brain is wired to sense and notice the emotions of others and then react to their emotions. Now, we could have several other podcast episodes on how the mind then decides to react in response to the emotions and actions of other people. That's part of the attachment system, which if you're curious about that, look up attachment. It's another interesting topic that I dove into a lot, but would take a lot to explain. So that's something for another day. But the brain is wired based on our relationships to behave in a certain way based on the actions of other people. So this is wired into our neurobiology. We can't not be affected by other people's emotions. We, as humans, are wired to be deeply affected by other people's emotions. So when you're having a long day and by the end of the day, you're like, wow, I am like sensory overload, feeling the weight of my students' emotions. That isn't airy-fairy stuff. That is your neurobiology. So you do feel your students' emotions. That is draining at the end of the day. Like, don't discount that. That is how your body is made. So what do we do now? Okay, now that we know that this system exists, what can we do with this knowledge? And this just really showed me how incredibly important it is to co-regulate in the classroom. So that means taking time at the beginning of class every day to do things that help our students and us to regulate our emotions and get our mind and body into a calm, focused state where we are ready to learn. Because in a classroom with, 25 plus students, probably, that's a whole whackload of different emotions. Everyone is coming into the classroom with a different story, having come from a different morning, a different whatever. They're coming in with emotion, like it or not. We are humans and we are all feeding off of each other's emotions. So what can we do to be proactive about this? Let's start our morning with a guided mindfulness practice. Let's sit with our students and say, hey, we're humans. We have emotions. Here's our time to relax, to rest, to give our body the chance to get into that rest and restore state, which flips the switch in our brain saying, okay, now that we're calm, now that we can tell that we're safe, now that we know that all is well, now my brain is ready for learning. Because when the brain is stressed, the learning centers are essentially turned off. So we're, trying to push through a wall if we try to jump right into academics. If we pause, take 5 minutes to co-regulate, it doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be anything wild, but creating this routine in your day where when we come together as a class, the first thing we do is we create safety, we create calm, we create a space where we feel like we're part of a community that cares for us. Just thinking about that makes me feel more calm. Just thinking about as if I were a student and I knew that the first thing we did in class was to connect, to co-regulate, to feel a sense of calm before we jump right into action. I would love coming to class every day. I'd be excited about it. And as a teacher, doesn't that make you more excited to start your day knowing that you're going to start from a calm place? So emotion is me and it's we. We are a social species, and this emotional communication is happening whether we like it or not. So we can fight against it or we can choose to work with it. So I encourage you, if you haven't already, sign up for the EduCalm free trial. This is going to give you access to the first unit of EduCalm, which will give you our whole introduction to mindfulness unit for free. So this is going to give you a video to show your students right at the beginning. It's a 5-minute video that explains mindfulness, explains what the expectations are during the practice, explains why we would do it, why it's helpful for them, and takes away that, I don't know how to start this with my students. You don't have to be the expert in this. You just have to press play and learn with your students. You get that intro video. You get daily audios. So there are 10 different audios in that unit that you can use with your students. We have 2-minute and 5-minute. So if you're like, I don't think my students are ready for 5 minutes, or I'm not ready for 5 minutes, start with 2 minutes. 2 minutes takes very little time, and it's a great way to just dip your toe in this co-regulation with your students. There are printables, there are posters, there's all sorts of things in there for free for you to get started with mindfulness in the classroom with your students, to take advantage of this communication, this interpersonal neurobiology in the classroom, so that you can actually move farther with academics because you've taken the time to prepare the mind and body. We also, in that free trial, have a 15-minute video for you, the teacher, to fully understand how to use EduCalm in your classroom. So you don't need to, take a professional development seminar or have time away from the classroom or pay for any of this. You just set aside 15 minutes, watch the video, and you'll know exactly how to plan this into your classroom routine so that you have a mental hygiene routine in your classroom. All right, so where to find this? Go to educalm.com/welcome. And there you're going to find a page with all sorts of freebies that we have for you to help you get started with co-regulating in the classroom using mindfulness to help social emotional development and help your students to better be able to manage their emotions and behaviors independently over time, and for everyone to benefit from feeling calm and gaining skills for emotional regulation. All right, friends, thank you so much for sharing this time with me today. I'm so excited to be back and to continue sharing the new things that I've been learning since becoming a mom and all the stuff that I'm going to bring back to my classroom. Now, just to recap some of the resources I shared about today, the books I mentioned are The Developing Mind by Dr. Dan Siegel, The Whole Brain Child by Dr. Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. I also talked about getting our free resources at educalm.com/welcome. So that's spelled educalme.com/welcome. You can also find the show notes where we'll link all of these things as well at educalm.com/TBE164. So that's educalme.com/TBE as in the Balanced Educator 164. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend or a colleague that you think would get value from this free resource too. Thank you for sharing this time with us. We appreciate you, and we truly appreciate all the wonderful work that you're doing in the world. Take care.